Welcome to another episode of the Wild Strength Podcast, where we talk about all things wild and all things strength and everything in between. Today I have Mike and Josh on here. I will let them introduce themselves in a second, but we're going to start with the walk-up song, Hot in Here by Nelly.
Courtesy of Mike Herne.
Courtesy of Mike Herne. Got the jams going. I think that's a solid walk-up song. That
yeah, but
sets
you didn't
the
get
mood
to
for...
take off all your clothes parts.
Oh
so.
wait, here we go. All right, we got to get there first before we start. Wait. Where?
Hey.
Why can't I find it?
I don't know. It's some.
All right, that's taken too
Girl,
damn.
I think I'm busking.
All right, I will let them introduce themselves. Mike, we'll start with you. Give a brief little introduction, and then Josh will toss it over to you.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Herne. What do you want to know about me?
Anything and everything. Tell it all.
So my day job is in the Army, and by night I work community marketing for Born Primitive Outdoor, and then do some of that stuff for a few other brands on the side.
Sweet. And Josh, what about you?
So I'm Josh Walker, retired NFL player. I'm now the host of I got a little hunting podcast called Retired to Hunt, but just a lifelong hunter. I'm a hunter, man. That's what it is.
Sweet. And so when Guy introduced you as NFL player turned hunter, but it sounds like you have hunted all of your life.
My whole life.
Yeah. What was that? You're from Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
What did that look like for you growing up there? Awesome.
Coming up, growing where I'm at, that's just something that most people do.
Yeah.
It's a way of food procurement and stuff like that because, I come from a very low income type of a rural farm town, you know what I mean? So if you can go out and kill a couple does every year, that's a lot of pound of meat, you know what I mean, for the coming months. So, yeah, it was a very regular, common thing. Like we used to bring, say you shoot a turkey in the morning, you bring it to school with you. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm from. Very small, rural part of Tennessee.
Nice. And Mike, you grew up hunting as well, yes?
Yep, I grew up in upstate New York, a lot like Josh, same thing. Rural, low income. Hunting was how you got meat. I mean, you wouldn't starve, you could go to the grocery store, but you could save money by hunting.
Exactly.
Where we live now and what we all like to do now is the exact opposite. It's about as expensive as it gets as far as hunting, but it's an adventure, right? I think I could speak for both Josh and I and you. It's just like training for the Super Bowl or training for a big game. It gives you a sense of purpose. So you spend money on gear, you spend money on your fitness, you spend time and energy on your fitness, and you prepare all year long to be able to backpack in the mountains and chase animals with massive racks or whatever it is you're out there chasing. But it's an adventure, and you're just out there. I think it's the most basic form of living.
Yeah,
right?
I would agree. Yeah.
When I have a backpack on and I backpack 6 miles into the wilderness, I'm not worried about my cell phone bill. I'm worried about food, water, shelter, and conserving my energy and finding the animal that I'm trying to find and kill. So that's life.
Yeah,
that's how we're meant to live. We're not meant to go to a 9-to-5 job and work in an office to earn money to pay for our house and our truck and all this comfort stuff that we don't need. So once you get out there, all that stuff strips away. All those things that come with that get stripped down to the bare minimum, and it's you versus the mountains, and it can be, and it is life or death out there.
Yeah,
so,
I would agree. So to touch on a couple of things that you mentioned, one, you said it used to be a way of saving money. Growing up, that was you fill in the freezer, you're living off of that, you're sustaining off of that, and then now these days, all the gear that goes into it, maybe the tags, depending on where you're hunting. For someone who is new getting into it, and maybe that is a deterrent for them, what would you kind of recommend? And kind of both of you can speak to that.
I would say you don't have to have a ton of money. You got to get out there and get the experience.
For sure.
And when I say a way of saving money, that's East Coast hunting or east of the Mississippi, right? They have whitetail deer are the most common ungulate in America, right? They're in almost all the states. So back home, for him and I back home, they're everywhere. So it's not a difficult task on the opening day of deer season to go out with a rifle or a slug gun. In my case, that's all we were allowed to use back in the day, and smoke a doe and have some meat in the freezer. Whereas out here, the Western United States, I've explained it to people. As far as hunting goes, it's kind of like the Cancun of hunting, the Western U.S., which is why the tag system's completely different. You got the draw system, all that stuff, because the wildlife agencies have to manage them for that. But I'm getting off track. Money, you can make it work with crappy gear. You're gonna and not crappy gear. You can get by with what you have. You can get by with just about anything. It really comes down to your skill level and how much you're willing to suffer, right? Like I spent plenty of freezing cold nights in the field because I didn't have a good sleeping bag or a good sleeping pad. I was using Army issued stuff, or I was using stuff that I bought at Walmart, and I spent plenty of uncomfortable days hiking around the mountains using not very good backpacks or using stuff that I was issued in the Army, right? And so you can do it. It's totally doable. You'll see good old boys in the mountains all the time. The Amish are a perfect example. I've run into the Amish in some
I've
of
seen
the
a couple of them
areas
walking around here.
Yeah. I didn't see any buying backpacks from Kafaru though, so they're probably going to be uncomfortable out there.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so,
But
go ahead.
but they're out there. They're doing it right. They don't have $200 pants and $150 shirt. They're out there in whatever their wool or whatever clothing
Whatever
they
they
got.
have.
They're out there getting after it. Yeah.
For sure. Josh, do you have any for someone who's new to this?
I pretty much echo what Mike said. I mean, you could come out here and hunt in blue jeans like the old timers used to do it. But you mentioned about suffering, Mike, and that's one of those deals where could you do it? Yeah, but you ain't gonna be real comfortable. So, you can come out here with a relatively thin budget and get by, and you're gonna probably be more uncomfortable than if you shelled out the money to get the nice gear. But if I was gonna tell somebody new that's coming into this, like, what's the first thing that I would try and do to get into this would be learning the animal. Because if you only have a week to hunt in your entire year, you've got a week off, you don't want to come out here and mess around and not know what you're doing. And I'm not saying me or Mike go out every time we hunt and kill something. But the point is, you want to get yourself learned enough where that's the last thing you're worried about is, what do I need to know about this animal, right? It's like, and to me, I geek out on that stuff. Like when you go out west, it's different than in Tennessee or New York, whatever it is, where you set your tree stand up, wait for the wind to get right, you sit your stand. Out here, gear's important because you do a lot of walking for the most part.
For sure.
So for me, if I walk around in jeans, I'm just telling you, if I'm walking 5 miles doing 4,000 foot of vert in jeans, it ain't gonna be fun. Can I do it? Absolutely.
No.
Would I want to do it? No. So it's like, yeah, do I have the nice King's camo? Absolutely. And that's just because I hunt enough to where it's I can justify paying the money that I pay because I hunt a lot more than the average man. And, but if you're just a guy that's coming out a week of the year out from Ohio to come hunt elk, you don't need the best of the best stuff. But if you can't afford it, I would have the best of the best stuff.
For sure.
Because you're going to have a better time. And that's just what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, to kind of speak to that, like I started hunting in Texas and then came out here. My first season hunting out this way was last year. And same thing, I had what I had in Texas. I sold all my camping shit before I moved out here, so I didn't have any of that. And I'm actually going through this now, and I'm looking at a new pack. I bought a pack that just wasn't maybe the best pack, but it was one that, you know what, I have to buy all of this at once. I'm just starting, so I'm going to get one that's a little bit cheaper. And I've heard good things about it, but come to find out, I throw an elk quarter in there. That does not feel great on my back.
Gotcha.
So I think the gear can be very important, but you still can get it done.
And to that point, the more that you hunt, your gear list changes so much over the years from the standpoint of, you might be going in your first couple years carrying 80 pounds in there doing a 4-day backpack hunt, right? But the more you do it, the smaller your, right, Mike? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh yeah.
The smaller your list gets of the stuff, and by the way, I'm big on writing stuff down. I have a list of things, I take it very, very seriously. Mm-hmm. And it's like you said about the life or death thing. If I'm going in camping 5 miles in excuse my language if that's, my point is, if I'm going in there, that's some serious stuff. You know what I mean? So, how much can I learn before I go on these trips? How serious can I take it? Because how much does it mean to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would agree. And so both of you guys are kind of from the East and grew up doing that style of hunting. What was the learning curve like coming out West and kind of switching to that? Do you feel like that was a good solid base versus just starting out here?
Go ahead,
or was
Mike.
it just completely different?
I'm going to be honest. The biggest learning curve for me, because I've been in the military, So I already had a leg up on most people because I've been living out of a backpack for 18 years.
Yeah.
I've been living out of bags. So I already like the gear and going in with way too much stuff. Sure, I've cut some things off my gear list since the first time I backpack hunted, but my gear list was already pretty much dialed. The biggest thing for me was understanding the tag system, understanding how to get tags, understanding all the different rules. Because where I grew up and where Josh grew up too, you buy a deer tag, you get it like a buck and a couple of doe tags. When it's bow season, you can hunt with a bow. When it's muzzleloader season, you hunt with a muzzleloader. When it's rifle season, you're hunting those same tags. That tag's good till you fill it or don't fill it.
And you just go to the shell station and pick it up, too.
Yeah, the local Walmart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the biggest learning curve for me. I remember I bought my first over-the-counter archery tag, and I'm looking at it, and it doesn't have any units on it. It just says OTC. So I call Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I'm like, hey, I got an OTC tag. Where can I hunt? And they're like, hey, they got to Google the over-the-counter units. And so I Googled the over-the-counter units and saw the list of units. Like, for a guy coming from out east, there's no units in a state, right?
You have the whole state.
It's not broken up.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, the biggest learning curve. As far as the animals go, I'm an elk hunter. I don't know much about mule deer. And I have limited time to hunt because I'm still in the Army. So I blow my wad every year on elk. I love interacting with the animal. I like calling. I love everything about archery elk hunting. And people lose their minds when I say it, but the learning curve was not steep. It was the same as turkey. Same thing as turkey. The setup is the same. The calling concepts are pretty dang similar. And so I had to learn how to make the calls. I had to learn how to make elk sounds.
Not going to call in and out with the turkey call.
But I used the same concept.
Yeah.
Like with a turkey, when you're trying to call a tom to you, you don't want that tom to be able to see you until he's in range of whatever you got. Bow, shotgun, right? Same thing with a bull. I don't want that bull to be able to see me until he's in my range.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if I'm making a bull sound or a cow sound or whatever sound to bring him in, and he can look over there at that booth or look across the hallway and he doesn't see anything, he's like, well, I'm not coming any closer. So animals hang up for the same reasons. They hear it. It's Chris Rowe talks about it. If we're at my house and I call you guys I'm in my bedroom and I'm like, hey, Josh Whitney, come here. You guys go to my bedroom and you stop as soon as you get in that doorway, right? Yeah. And you look, where's Mike, right? Animals do the same exact thing. That's why they hang up. Yep. So that's what I took into elk hunting, and I think it helped me immensely.
Nice. Yeah. Josh, what about you?
I would agree 100%. Number one, I love hunting turkeys. Golly.
Me too.
And, I would literally, again, echo exactly what Mike said, man. For a lot of those guys down south or out east in the Midwest, if you love to hunt turkeys, I don't know much, but I can tell you this. You probably would just geek out on elk hunting because it's turkey hunting on crack. It's a giant, 700-800-pound animal that screams, is very vocal, and it's just, if you think turkey hunting's fun, like when you go out and you hoot in the morning, you hear a gobble, listen, there's nothing like blowing that first. You may not have to blow a tube in the morning, but hearing that first bugle in the morning, it's turkey hunting on crack.
Yeah, I think, and I've kind of heard you mention that before, Mike, that it is kind of like turkey hunting on steroids. Mm-hmm. For someone who is, like, whether it's out west or really anywhere, you mentioned that you like to really hone in on elk hunting. And because of the time constraint that you have.
Yeah.
But do you recommend, do you find honing in on elk hunting maybe has made you better and other hunts that you've done? I know different animals can do different things and be in different terrains and all of that. Or would it be more beneficial to just kind of learn all the tools of the trade at once?
I mean, that's a tough one to say definitively. I'll say wild pigs. If you're in a state that has wild pigs, those animals, that's what taught me about animal behavior, being on the ground. Because I grew up hunting whitetails from a tree stand, so that's a little bit different. That's what taught me how to move around animals. Pigs are a lot more forgiving. Their eyesight's not as good. Their scent's really good, but their hearing and eyesight isn't as switched on as a whitetail. I fucking hate whitetail on the ground. I refuse to do it. So, anyways, pigs, but they're forgiving. So it's a fun opportunity to hunt. They're an invasive species, so if you don't if you mess up the meat or you don't want to keep the meat, you don't have to feel bad about it. They need to die either way.
Sure.
So they're a great animal to make mistakes on, and they're a great animal to get numerous encounters with, because you generally, if
They're
you're in an
everywhere.
area that has wild pigs, you're going to get plenty of opportunity to get into it. So
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I would also say, like, I think a great starter Western species would be an antelope. Because, yeah, number one, as far as eyesight goes, they're like a turkey. I mean, you can't make mistakes from a movement standpoint. And they also have a sense of smell that's pretty damn good too. So it's a very formidable species. They're not real hard to spot. You know,
Yep.
they're white. You
Wide
see
open
those big
spaces.
white butts. You know, or they're not big white butts. It's a small animal, but it's a white butt that glows like a mirror. You know what I mean? And they live typically they're in flatter country, right? So to me, I think outside of a turkey, I think antelope kind of transcends hunting antelope. If you can hunt antelope, I think you can hunt about anything. And again, hunting elk, are you hunting them on a flat tabletop area? Not all the time, but there are some units in the state where you're hunting them in flat land. So it is different from a terrain standpoint. But as far as just being a formidable species that you can get a lot of stalks in, antelope. I think it's antelope.
So is your approach on that, and I ask this because I've typically heard that antelope are hard to hunt just because of the wide open space that they're in.
More
They
so
can't
with a
see
bow. We're
everything.
talking about bow hunting.
For sure,
here.
yes.
With
yeah.
a rifle, it's not. I'm not saying it's not difficult, but
Yeah.
it's different. Like with
Yeah.
a bow, trying to stalk an antelope in antelope country, it's not.
Is your perspective like because it is such a challenge that like if you can master that, then you can do anything?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think that's a great perspective because I've heard hunting antelope with a bow is like one of the most challenging things that you'll
It's
do.
tough.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you're taking shots like 70 plus yards.
Absolutely.
The likelihood you're in closer than that is rare.
I got super lucky this year. I killed mine August the 20-something this year, and it was 48 yards. I was literally I was trying to get to my knees, but he saw me too quick. So I'm like squatted below parallel, and I shot him below parallel. I was in a rut. There was a 2-track, and I was in one of the ruts. Long story short, my point is this. To see that antelope at 48 it blew my mind because I was like, damn, I'm within 50 of this thing. Like,
Yeah.
I did not expect
That's
to do
close.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's close.
With a bow.
It's
But with
close.
anything that's close.
yeah, well, with anything,
Yeah.
I have to have a laugh, and for those that are listening, Josh is someone who is really tall, so I'm imagining you like squatting down.
6'5",
Trying-
290 pounds, just squatted down
He's
in the
an
middle of the road.
NFL player.
Yeah, I'm imagining you trying to squat down and shoot this antelope, and it's
102 degrees, dust blowing around. I had a herd of cattle. Long story short, during the stalk, I had to walk past a water tank, and there's about 35 head of cattle there. Well, I get 50 yards past the water tank, and I hear a fart. Like, what the hell? I look behind me, the whole herd followed me. So I'm like, I might as well turn around. But long story short, ended up working out. But
Nice, yeah, that's awesome. And so kind of switch gears a little bit, and you kind of mentioned like you were physically prepared through being in the Army, you were in the NFL. Do you, and you can kind of each speak to your own experiences in that, do you feel like the training maybe that you did for either of those helped you be like more physically prepared for being in the backcountry, and not even just packing anything out, just like putting the miles on your feet? Because I believe like, yes, you train for the hunt, but like you just have to be physically fit. There's no specific set thing that one person has to do. So do you think that that has kind of transferred to that as well?
Go ahead, Mike.
For me, yeah. I mean, it's everything I do in the Army is wearing a backpack, running, cardio. Like it's a like kind of full body athlete perspective. So yeah. I mean, it directly translates to hunting. But I would say for newer hunters, I mean, you don't have to be the most physically fit, right? It's not a race to the top of the mountain. I'm not out there. The same workouts I'm doing in the gym are not the same thing I'm doing when I'm on the mountain. It's the opposite. I'm trying to conserve energy. I'm trying to pick smart routes. I'm not running straight up the face of a mountain.
For sure.
I'm trying to pick a smart route up that mountain. So for new hunters, you don't have to be the most fit person. I know fat people that get out there and
Get after it.
they kill animals. But like everything, being physically fit, being mobile, having a good amount of mobility and cardio ability and all that stuff just makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So,
And kind of before he's back and answered, you had mentioned like making it easy, more efficient, basically,
Yeah.
right? So like I hear people brag about the miles and miles and miles that they're putting on their feet, and they're not killing anything.
yeah, because they're running all over the mountain.
For sure.
And I mean, I was that guy my first couple of seasons. I would run all over and blow elk out of entire units, right? And then I was like, well, I hike in the middle of the day. When the elk are down, I'm down. If they're not talking, I always say if they're not talking, I'm not walking.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, you learn to be, eventually, hopefully, you learn to be more efficient and move when the animals are moving. The middle of the day, unless I watched an animal go bed somewhere and they're in a stalkable spot, if I have no idea where the elk are, I'm not bombing all over the mountain in the middle of the day.
Yeah, I think that's smart. Yeah, I think too often I hear people just brag about how many miles they're putting on their feet when they're out there. And like for me, like as someone who's new, I'm like, oh shit, I got to go put miles on my feet to get this done. But then you talk to people who, and like I said, oftentimes those are people who aren't killing things. But then you talk to people who are getting it done, and it's like there's that efficiency part of it. Do you want to kind of speak to that? Like, how did being in the NFL, did training for that? Do you feel like that kind of translates a little bit?
It definitely translates.
Makes you feel more prepared.
Oh, 100%. I think the biggest thing the biggest takeaway I take from football to carry it over to hunting, you can attest to this, Mike, is just the won't quit attitude. Because if you hunt long enough, you're going to put yourself in a situation where you get that feeling of, damn, man, like, why am I doing this? Like, what, you know what I mean? And, you know, outside of the training side of things, it's more of a mental game. Like, you can take a guy that's not in the best shape, but if he's a tough ass and he's mentally tough, and he can come out here and walk and not whine and grind, because you're going to hurt. But it goes back to the old cliche about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? And, you know, there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable moments on the elk hill, and that's just a fact. You know, but you just got to, I don't know, man. It just depends, like I said earlier, about how much it means to you, because I don't give a shit about the pain and all the stuff that comes, because I'm focused on the end goal. I don't give a shit what it takes to get to it, so... But,
and I would say it builds your resilience and your mental toughness, right? Like, if I hear, and I've been this guy. There's been days where I've heard an elk bugle I'm like, I look out across, I got to cross 2 ridges, and I'm dropping 1,000 feet, up 1,000 feet, mm-hmm. down another 1,000. I'm like, I'm not going over there. Mm-hmm. I'm not going over there. Like, so, and that decision, that like seeing all that distance between you and where you just heard that animal, yes. and the willingness to go over there could be a difference in you being successful or not, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you're physically fit and you're healthy and you feel good and you're up to the task and you're dedicated, get over there, get the animal killed, hopefully. But then it also comes down to you have to be smart too, right? Because you kill an animal. 3 years ago, me and Aaron Snyder and South Cox all went way deep. We were 14 miles back by the time Aaron killed his bull, and we had killed 2 bulls in the same day, 14 miles from the trucks.
Hell yeah.
Right? And yeah, hell yeah. That was fucking terrible.
I bet.
It was fucking terrible. We were all fit enough. We were all in the right condition to get them out, right?
Real quick, Mike, to that point, like anybody that's never been out here and climbed in elevation and climbed steep stuff, don't, like when you're on OnX and you're looking at prospective hunting areas and you're putting your camp at like 8 miles in, it's probably a damn mistake. I'm just telling you. Because an 8-mile walk in Tennessee is completely different than an 8-mile walk in northern Colorado, where the hell you're at. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
like 8 miles might sound doable, and it may be, but I can tell you, if you've never walked in elevation and you've never walked steep ass shit, it's going to be more than what you're thinking. I can tell you that right now.
And I never recommend a new hunter. I don't like backpack hunting. For me, I'm not a new hunter. Backpack hunting is my last resort. Do I love backpack hunting? Yes. But backpack hunting is my last resort. Like, I am trying to hunt from the truck as much as I possibly can. I'm trying to stay as mobile as I can, especially if I'm going into a new unit or a new location. I'll have plans, like plans in the roads, spots where I'm going to camp, areas I'm going to go in and check out and hunt, and then I'll have plan A, B, C. D is usually when I'm looking at a backpack hunt. And the reason I say that is you go now, guys like Snyder and Josh have made it so cool that that now I'll backpack 3 or 4 miles in even, or 5 miles in, and I'll see 3 tents back there. And I just humped I just used all that time and energy to get back there, and there's just as many people back there as there were when I left the trailhead. So I like to hunt the in between. Like, some guys will not go off the trail at all. Some guys are only hunting from the road, And then there's the Snyderites out there that are going balls deep into the backcountry. I like to get into those middle areas and try to find animals.
Yeah, I think that's good. And speak to kind of 2 points here, a little bit more about the road hunting, because you're not specifically shooting from your truck, unless, I mean, I'm sure you would if you had the opportunity. But what I'm interpreting that as, like, you said you like to stay mobile, hunting from your truck,
Hunting
quote,
from
unquote,
the truck, yeah.
keeps you, like, you're camping in the truck.
I'm
you
camping
can go in a
or
couple
at the
miles
truck,
in,
yep.
and to the efficiency point that you made, like, even, oh, shoot, I'm forgetting his name. Unimportant. He was saying, I had him on the podcast, and he was saying kind of the same thing. He's like, I kind of consider myself a road hunter, but because whenever I go 5, 6, 7 miles in, that's where I see the most people, because we have now made this something that is very popular, and that's a cool thing to do, and you look like you kicked your shit in, so that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, you can come back and say, I hiked 30 miles back.
But you didn't get anything.
But I didn't kill anything.
Didn't
yeah.
kill nothing.
I killed that big bull I killed this year. I had to carry him. That's not where my truck was parked initially, but I was able to drive my truck 60 yards away from where he lied at, right?
Yeah, nice.
And that was a big bull, right?
That was a
and
big bull.
everybody and their
and
brother.
not having to carry that 12 miles.
Yeah, and on opening day, like everybody and their brother are going way, way deep into the mountains. And I just went to a spot and was going to hunt the morning from the truck, and that was the result, right? So
yeah.
and that's over the counter. That's as grimy as it gets, or hard as it gets for Colorado hunting. So it's doable. Now, killing a bull that size, like, that was pure luck.
Right, you didn't know you were going to see that.
I didn't know I was going to see that bull, right? And so, but being able to kill a bull or kill an elk, it's doable. My first bull was less than a mile from the truck, and my second bull was 70 yards from a closed logging road, so you couldn't drive down it, and probably just over a mile from where my truck was parked at the gate that closed that logging road.
That's not bad at all.
So I had to hike it 70 yards out of the drainage to the logging road, and then I was walking on a road. It was uphill. It wasn't steep. So all three of the elk I've killed with a bow have been within under 2 miles from my truck, right?
Nice.
So,
Yeah.
and then that Snyder hunt, we had llamas, and there's a high point draw unit, and they knew there was elk back there. So, I mean, and if anyone's watched the South Cox films, both the bulls that he killed from me to you away, basically under 5 feet.
The 5-foot bull is the name of the film, right?
Yeah, 5-foot bull, if you want to look it up.
Incredible film, if you haven't
And
watched
then
it.
the other one was self-defense. That was the year I was in there. South shot that bull, and then Aaron and I ran into him on the trail. We went up just a little bit further and killed Aaron's bull 2 hours later. So, but they knew that unit. They knew those elk were in there. They knew what kind of elk were in there. So it was worth going that far back there.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, like, to your point, the guys you see that are far back there, they don't even know what they're looking for. I mean, they know what they're looking for. They're looking for elk, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know that they're going to be back there. So,
Yeah,
so what's
a lot of people are
the-
backpack hunting
Why
just to
go?
backpack
So,
hunt because
so
it's
people
cool.
are hunting the country and not the elk is what that is.
Yeah,
And,
Yeah.
100%.
To Mike's point about the mobility thing, like, I agree with what you said. Like, the experience of backpack hunting, until you spent some nights out in a tent by yourself in the middle of nowhere, I mean, it's an incredible experience. But with that being said, I think that the most efficient thing to do is to be as mobile as you can. And I don't think backpack hunting is being mobile. And here's what I mean. Like, if I walk in 4 miles to a spot, I better know there's elk around there somewhere, right? Or I just expended a shit ton of energy and time and all that stuff to go back there and camp, because I could have been leaving from my truck in the morning, going and checking out spots. And if the elk aren't there, I might move 15 miles down the road. You know what I mean? Where if you're backpack hunting back there, you're kind of stuck unless you pull out, right? So, and on top of that, one thing that I've done is, I love wall tent camping. I love it, especially in later season when it gets cold. But one thing I do find is it kind of makes me put roots in the ground, and I don't like that, because there's a lot of time that it takes to tear down a big Taj Mahal wall tent, right? So I might be in a spot and I'm not having much success, and I should probably move, but I'll come back at night all tired, and I'm like, let's hunt it one more day because it's going to take 2 hours to tear all this shit down.
Set it back up.
Whereas if I would have just, put up a little tent or slept in a truck, something like that, I'd be more apt to just move when I should probably move. Because if the elk ain't there, they're not there. You got to hunt the elk.
Yeah, and I've heard, and on the topic of, like, calling them in, like you said, if they're not there, maybe some folks, like, think that they can, like, call them in. But I've even heard people who don't even know how to call at all, and they're still successful every year.
Oh,
Yeah.
you don't have
Oh,
to, you
yeah.
don't have to be nothing crazy to
You
call
don't-
in anything.
You don't. Yeah, you really don't. To call them in consistently and successfully, like year over year, I think that takes some skill. But you don't necessarily have to be a great elk caller to do it. I do it, and I'm not great, right? But there's people that don't call at all and
Yeah.
kill elk, but they hunt a different style. For me,
sure.
the draw to elk hunting is the call. I
Because
love.
you like the turkey
I
call,
grew up
right?
well, yeah, and I grew up whitetail hunting and sitting in a tree and I hunted primarily public land. So sitting in a tree and wondering if I was going to see a deer,
Yes.
or looking at a tree, I'm already 20 feet in a
Yes.
tree. I climbed up there in the dark. I'm looking at a tree 20, 30 feet away thinking, man, I should have maybe gotten that tree.
Yep.
And I'm using a climbing tree stand. It's kind of like the wall tent. Like, I'm committed now. I'm stuck. I'm here. I'm here for the day, or at least here for the full morning. So with elk hunting, I'm on the ground, right? And that's why I like to be mobile. I like to be able to, if I didn't get into anything in this drainage in the morning, I can hike back down to my truck and I'm moving to a different drainage for the evening. Or if I saw some promising sign that morning but I didn't hear a bull, I might hang out and keep an eye on things that day and save my energy and take a nap on the mountain and stay up there,
Yeah.
not go back to the truck, and then see what the evening brings.
Yeah, I think that's good because, like you said, just to see more, probably you can see more terrain that way. And to Josh's point, like, you might have backpacked 15 miles in, but you're kind of stuck there. So then I guess, say you're just in the scouting phases, it's not maybe actually season yet. Would you maybe recommend doing the however many miles in just to see the area? Or like, what if someone like didn't even get the time to scout, they go in, and you still think that like staying mobile is that best option?
So here's what I'll say about for elk hunting.
Yep.
Deer hunting, completely different. For elk hunting, over the counter, I'm speaking to over the counter, I don't scout.
Yeah.
Because Josh and I hunt the same ground.
Once you
And-
find an area, sorry to cut you off, Mike, but once you find an area where there's elk, a lot of times they're going to be back there the next year.
Yep.
Or somewhere very close. So go ahead, Mike. But yeah,
But-
that's...
Scouting, right? You go in, you spend time, and I'm not telling people not to scout. I just don't do it because I can call them and figure out where they're at.
Yep.
But scouting, I have scouted elk and found elk, and they're in that drainage. What I didn't do, and you can't do till opening day, is scout where all the people are going to be. Because I scout this drainage, there's a herd in there every night. I'm camping, I'm checking it out. That's the spot, right? And then I go out there on September 2nd when elk season opens, and it's a ghost town because
Just people are there.
everybody's there. So I try to, during the season, more than anything, I try to scout the people. I try to scout the hunters. I figure out where camps are. I mean, up where Josh and I hunt, man, I know the same camps are there every year. I know the guys.
Highly pressured.
But I know the guys that are up there now. Like, I stopped by their camp and bullshit with them. That's how but I'm doing that. I'm scouting the people. I'm trying to figure out where the people are, and
Maybe asking them where they're going.
and that's what I do more than anything with elk. I scout the people. I figure out where the people are. Are they way far back in there? Are they close to the road? And then I get in those areas in between the people, and that's generally where I find the elk.
Yeah, Josh, you do something. So I know you guys, sounds like you guys hunt together a little bit, but like when you're kind of out doing your own thing, do you do something similar?
So me and Mike, we haven't hunted together, but we have exchanged a lot of messages because we hunt. I'm talking about
Like,
the
we're
exact-
walking the
I
same
mean,
same
the
dirt.
same damn spots. But yeah, so what he said about, like, I would call it, and I didn't coin this term, but somebody else did. Some other guy I was watching some of his YouTube stuff. He called it the reverse pressure theory. And what it is, you know, you get a lot of that pressure from a lot of the guys that want to go 7, 8, 10, however many miles back there, and you get those little pockets of elk that are from the dirt road into 2 miles that are just in these hellish holes that people overlook because I want to get 5, 6 miles back in there. So when I come home, I can show people my Onyx shit and say, look how many blah, blah, blah I did this day. And it's like you get those little pockets of elk that they're not that far back in there because they've been watching guys walk past them for the last week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I do believe that. Like, there's times where you'll run into elk. Like, I'll be on the way to a spot, and I struggle with this, and I should get better at it. Like, sometimes when I'm on the way to my glassing knob, I don't pay as much attention as I should to what's around me because I think there's not going to be nothing until I get to there, right? And, like, there's been times where I've blown elk out on the way to the glassing knob. You know what I mean? And you see them in unexpected spots.
I sent Whitney out to a spot this year,
There was
And
there too.
She jumped a bull up.
I did. I was so mad. And to your point, it was super close to where I parked.
It was super close to where you parked. Yeah.
Like 10 minutes of walking in there, and it's steep terrain if I were to continue going. 10 minutes in there, and I shit you not, I saw probably and granted I'm new to elk hunting, but I saw a big bull, and I was like, I spent the rest of that day.
She texted me. I was like,
I spent the rest of that day trying to get back on him, but also I was going in there like it was a hurry up and wait kind of thing, right? My thought was I'm going to get to this point that Mike shared with me, and then once I get to that point, then I'm going to start hunting.
Yeah.
Where like my mindset should be, I'm hunting the second I leave that car.
As soon as you leave the
So I was going quick. I wasn't trying to be quiet. Like I was stomping on, like at that time of the season, all the leaves had started to fall, so the leaves are loud. I'm not thinking about any of that. And sure enough, I was probably 100 yards from him when I saw him. So had I been paying attention, I could have got a nice shot on him.
Yep.
But I wasn't paying mind to any of that stuff.
Yep.
And I have to tell myself that every season. Like
Yeah.
I get complacent. I get out of the truck, just like Josh said. We all do. He just said he does the same damn thing, right? You're going to that spot and not hunting all the way to that spot.
That happened to me twice this past season. Just going in, trying to get to the first, before that one, I was walking to a wallow, and same thing. He was right at that wallow too. And just trying to get there as fast as I could, try to get set up. And sure enough, I bumped him. So I think for me, keeping in mind that like when you're out there, you're hunting.
Yeah.
And like try to keep everything else in mind.
From the moment you leave the truck.
Yeah. So you guys both kind of touched on this a little bit when I had asked about like, do you feel like the Army prepared you for hunting? Do you feel like the NFL prepared you like physically? And you both kind of touched on like the mental component of it. And I think both careers challenge you mentally, and that's something that's really great about those. And so maybe talk about kind of how that translates to hunting as well. You're 10 days deep maybe in elk woods. You haven't seen anything. Maybe you haven't heard anything. And I know you guys know where the elk are, so maybe that's not as much of a thing anymore. But like you have to be mentally fit, we'll say, to be able to stay out there, because I know people who are like, man, I've been out there 7 days, I didn't see here nothing, like my time's up, it's time to go.
Well, so to that point, like you got to understand, we have the largest elk herd in the country, right? And that's true. But there's people that come out here years and years, year after year, and they don't even find a fresh pile of shit. My point is this. You can look on X and see all the green and see the yellow, meaning the BLM and the National Forest Service land. There's a lot of it, right? There's a lot of places to hunt, but there's not elk everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So it is tough to kill elk over the OTC tag. It's tough hunting.
It is.
So like you need to come into it and understand like it's not going to be like walking through Estes Park and there's going to be, or maybe it is. Maybe you're lucky as shit and like you leave the truck and there's elk everywhere. But in my experience, that's not the way it is. So you just need to come into it knowing it's going to be a difficult hunt if you're hunting. I don't care if it's limited or any of that shit. There's a good chance it's going to be one of the harder things you've ever done, depending on what your background is. Because I've had some times on the mountain, and I was an offensive lineman. I've done some difficult shit, like nothing near like the things Mike have done and seen. My point is this. I've done some hard-ass shit. But there's been times where I'm on that mountain, and I'm like, God, dog, bud, I need to lay down or something. This is rough. Like, I mean, you hit the wall, and it's who can climb over the wall. You know what I mean? Instead of, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, same thing that Josh said. One thing I will do, though, like if I'm getting to that point where mentally I'm like not wanting to get up, I'll take a morning, I'll sleep in.
Nothing wrong with
Because just
that.
sleeping in, I'll drive to town, I'll eat a burger. I have, in the middle of the season, said, screw it, kind of hunted the morning, didn't get much luck, like really low motivation to hike miles and miles and not hear bugles. And I went down and fly fished in a river. I always keep my fly rod in my truck.
Yeah.
So I'm still out there. It kind of gives me a good little mental reset. Should I be elk hunting? Yeah, but my head's not in the game. So I take a break and just go fly fish and get my mind right and then get back in there. But yeah, there is a mental toughness aspect of it that just, I mean, mainly for the discomfort and that stuff, and then being able to stay out there even though you're not hearing animals. If you see sign, that's another thing, like not hearing animals or seeing animals. I still, to this day, can't figure out how these elk specifically, big-ass fucking animals, hide so well, like...
Or how they move through the terrain so quietly, man.
Yeah. But but they do. Like, I mean,
blows my mind.
But you got to stick with it, and that perseverance, it takes one opportunity. And I'll tell you the story of my first season, because this is a testament to that. I hunted a unit that I'd never been in. It was my first season, the same unit that Josh and I hunt, and I hunted this unit, and I got to a trailhead. This was a week into the hunt or so, right? I got to the trailhead. I ready to go. I'm the only truck there. I'm like, sweet. Another truck pulls up. It's a dude and his kid. It's his kid's first season hunting. He's like, well, you want to just hunt together so we don't screw each other up? I'm like, sure. Oh, there goes. I'm thinking inside my head. I'm like, well, I only got a week of leave left for I got to go back to being in the Army, and I'm not going to shoot a bull or an elk before this kid gets the opportunity to. Well, we went down and we found a bull and started working that bull as me and this kid's dad, and trying to call that bull into this kid, and a bull ended up coming up behind us, bugling. He's like, go get set up on that bull. So I went, set up completely wrong. Did everything wrong in the book. I jumped behind a tree instead of in front of a tree. But bull stopped from me to you away on the other side of the tree. I got rangefinder in one hand.
Nothing you can do.
And nothing I could do. I tried. I dropped my rangefinder and tried to, and the bull ran off, right? Then a cow came running in following him. My rangefinder's on the ground by the tree, and doggone sent an arrow over her back, right? And I'm like, well, I've been already out here struggling for a week. This was my chance. Didn't get it. That evening, I went and sat like a watery wallow area that looked like it was going to be a wallow. Hung out, just cold call. Yeah. It was my first season ever, right? Hung out, just cold call. Heard a bull kind of half-ass bugle. That bull came into 30 yards. Got to my knees, got to full draw, stopped the bull, hit him in the shoulder blade.
Nice. Well, not nice.
Not nice. Not nice. Hit him in the shoulder blade. Went, found my arrow, not much blood. Looked for him the rest of that night, came back the next morning, looked for him. Weren't finding him, right? So I'm like, all right, there's twice in one day. I'm definitely fucked now. There's no way in an over-the-counter unit, my first season, I get lucky 3 times really in one day, and I fuck it up all 3 times, right? I kept going. The last night of the last day, we were going to drive off the mountain and camp at the base because it was shitty to get up on top of the mountain. We were going to drive off the mountain that night, and I called a bull. I saw a bull, and then I called and got him to come back, and I managed to get an arrow in him on the last night of the last day we were driving off the mountain. Follow the blood trail, lose the blood trail, can't find him. Go back to the truck, sleep on top of the mountain, go out, find him 20 yards away from where we lost the blood trail the night before, right? So I stuck with it. I kept fucking up, and I kept just putting my pack back on, lacing my boots up, going back out, and that's how I killed my first bull ever, with a bow, right? So you got to stick with it, and you got to, as the great David Goggins says, you got to stay hard, motherfuckers.
Yeah. And I think that, like, can translate to all aspects of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and why not even just like encouraging people to hunt, but to get outdoors and to, like, I think we mentioned this earlier, like doing hard things transfers to all other aspects of your life. I'm sure coming out of that season, it took you all fucking season to get it. You leave that season like, man, I can come back next season even better.
Yeah.
Because I put that time out there, I did the work, I know a little bit more now.
Yep, and that's the other thing is it's the experience. Like people, I know people will put in for points in Colorado, Wyoming, wherever, and then never come elk hunt till they draw a 7-point unit, and this is their first time getting after elk.
You can watch as many damn YouTube videos as you want.
If they're doing it solo, if they got the money to pay an outfitter, it's a little different. But if they're doing it solo, yeah, you can watch as much YouTube as you want, but there is no substitute for real life experience in the field. So get the over-the-counter tag. Go out and hunt with your buddies if they'll let you go. If they'll let you go tag along, like just being out there, seeing how somebody calls, like being out there, seeing how that dad was calling for his kid. Mm-hmm. That was my first season ever. So that's besides YouTube, that's my first actual successful elk interaction, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
And then I just build on it, and you build on it year over year.
Yeah, I'd agree. That was kind of my thing this past year was like, who can I get out there with, even if I don't have a tag in my pocket, like just to experience it and see what it's like. I think we are coming up on about an hour here. I end all of my episodes asking my guests, what does wild strength mean to you? So kind of a play on the name of the podcast. You can interpret that however you want. You can take it quite literally to mean just brute strength, or you can kind of twist it and turn it however that plays. But either, what does wild strength mean to you, or just what does that make you think of?
I don't know. If you were to say wild strength, I would definitely think about, what does it take to be a successful hunter in a Western atmosphere, like wild strength. And it's like, it's not even so much of a strength thing. I think it's more of a mental thing. I really do. So to answer that question, what does wild strength mean to me? Damn, that's a hell of a question.
Yeah,
I love
that's
it.
A hell of a question.
That's why I shoved that off to you, because I knew she was going to come to me first.
What does wild strength mean to me? It's just like Mike said earlier about the resiliency, the perseverance, the resiliency, the never quit attitude. That's the strength you need to be out here doing this stuff. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I would agree. Mike?
Yeah, wild strength is, I would say that there's having the mindset and the aptitude and the physical aptitude, kind of being as well-rounded as you can possibly be, both in your resiliency, your mental strength, your knowledge, your fitness, and whatever gear you can get. Having all of that and just going out there with I'm not quitting until the season's over or I get the job done attitude.
Yeah, I like that. And if people want to find you or speak to you or anything afterwards, where can they find you, Josh? We'll start with you.
I'm at highcountry_jaywalk on Instagram. My podcast is called Retired to Hunt. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. But yeah.
Sweet. And Mike, where can people find you?
At Mike_Herne, Herne, on Instagram.
That's about it.
Sweet.
Thank you guys so much.
Absolutely.
And we will...
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.